Hello, I'm Frost, and as Yintan isn't currently producing any content, I thought I would jump in and produce this video on the subject of the deployment of a Keepstar in Delve. And I'm going to be covering what happened, why it happened, and the consequences of it happening. Welcome back. So on the evening UTC time of Sunday the 19th of October, PAPI were able to deploy on their fifth attempt a Keepstar in YZ9-F6, which is the Blood Raider NPC region of Delve. Now, to understand how this happened, we need to look at the previous 4 attempts. And the method used by the Imperium to take down the previous 4 deployments was to put in loads and loads of battleships. These long-range battleships, which were primarily Ravens. There are also some battle cruisers and Myrmidons and Bird 6s involved as well, but it was primarily Ravens. And the reason why is that in the Imperium have the access to huge amounts of minerals and have huge industry capabilities and can therefore produce masses of these ships. And they're able to therefore throw them just constantly at this Keepstar in order to maintain the cap damage and stop the repair timer. And over the period of between 8 to 12 hours, they would then be able to chip away at the Keepstar until it finally died. Now, the number of ships that were thrown at the Keepstars was pretty impressive. On the 4th attempt, there were over 2,000 battleships lost by the Imperium, but they managed to achieve their objective. Now, obviously, both sides put their spin on that, and I won't be going into propaganda. That's not my thing. If you want the propaganda, then check out Reddit. It will all be there, but I will mention some of it in passing as it is kind of relevant. So anyway, all these Ravens were constantly thrown at the Keepstar. But on the 5th attempt, something different happened. And what it was that just before the deployment of the Citadel, before the timer took place, let me just grab the screenshot, a whole number of bubbles were placed around the Keepstar. So this screenshot was supplied to me by PAPI. Now you can see, obviously, this is all the PAPI forces already in place waiting for all the Ravens to arrive with these bubbles. Now, we'll come on to the number of bubbles in a little bit later as it's relevant. But the main thing that happened because of these bubbles was it messed up all of the warp-ins for the Imperium. So the Imperium were warping their ships onto grid at range, but these bubbles were acting as drug bubbles, and they were just pulling the fleets straight into the edge of the bubbles and within range of pretty much every single ship from PAPI that was located around this Keepstar. And this happened with 3 fleets. There was a Ferox fleet, a Raven fleet, and a Proteus fleet, and all 3 of them just landed and just pretty much got insta-blapped. So at that point, there were some claims made by the Imperium that this was an abuse of game mechanics and that the bubbles were causing the clients to crash as they were coming on grid. Now, PAPI on the other side claimed that they had no such issues getting on grid. And so the bubbles became a point of contention. But as a consequence of that, Imperium made no further effort to try and stop the timer, and therefore the structure eventually anchored fully and got fully repaired and got its core put in and is now fully operational. Now, the number of bubbles claimed is different. So PAPI claimed there were 149 bubbles. Imperium claimed on Reddit and other places as well that there were more than that. If we actually look at Zkill and you actually count the number of bubbles that was destroyed, the mobile large order disruptor 2s, I had a quick little count and it comes to about 140. And PAPI cleared out their own bubbles so they were able to dock their ships into the Keepstar after it had anchored properly. So this is where the propaganda comes in and some of the blame on each side. But there is potentially another reason as well that influenced it. But before we come on to that, one of the things that I have to say, which was amazing, is the name that was chosen for this Keepstar. So the name of the Keepstar is Babylon 5. Now, it doesn't matter what side you're on, that is just an amazing name for this Keepstar. I mean, obviously Babylon 5, we've got the wordplay on bubbles, but also Babylon 5, if I remember correctly from the lore, the first 3 Babylons, I think they were built, or they were destroyed before they were finished being built. and the fourth one was built but never online. It just kind of disappeared. So there's obviously a tie into the law as well. So whoever came up with Bubble on 5, that great name, well done. And also these bubbles created a huge number of memes, which ended up on Reddit. And some of them were pretty funny, I have to admit. And but the other element that played a role in this, and this was brought up by Elise Randolph on Reddit, is that earlier in the day, a fortizar that was based in YZ9 that belonged to Goonswarm was destroyed. Now, this citadel was playing a major part in managing the supply of battleships to the grid. So essentially, they would not put in too many battleships, that they would just feed ships that weren't doing anything because they were already at damage cap, but not so few that the damage cap was too low and the timer would kick in. And then they would adjust this as well because of tie-dye by dropping dreads on grid, and the dreads would be able to maintain that cap if they were running too low on battleships coming on grid. Now this fortizar was no longer there, and this happened kind of less than, probably about 12 hours, no, a bit more than that, but it was less than 24 hours before this next citadel was anchoring. And this may have played a huge part as well in the Imperium not actually deciding to go through with trying to take on this Keepstar anchoring. So there we go. So that's what happened now and why it happened. But now we're going to come on to the consequences. And the consequences are all to do with bridging distances. So if we bring up a map of Delph, you can see here on the right-hand side, various systems all surrounded with a black border. Now these were the systems that were in range from the previous staging system of PAPI, which was 8QT-H4, which is right there, just on the right-hand side. But it was in Quiris, it was another region. And so there was very, very little ability to reach into Delph. But, and even with Black Ops, you could see that Black Ops still only went into probably about a third, maybe a tiny bit more of the regions that Goonswarm actually have sovereignty over. But once YZ9 comes online, this now becomes the range for both bridging fleets and also for super capital fleets to be able to jump into. And this reaches all the way over to 1DQ1, which is the capital system of Goonswarm. But that isn't the primary reason. The primary reason is that now this makes it very, very hard for Goonswarm to be able to maintain their ADMs, because they're not going to be able to mine as effectively, because before they had the ability to get coverage from the supercap umbrella. So in other words, what would happen was that Goonswarm would deploy their Rorquals, and only sub-capitals would ever be able to get into the region to attack them. And these sub-capitals would always be dropped on by the Imperium with capitals, super-capitals, faxes, etc. So it made it virtually impossible to kill Rorquals and mining ships inside of Delph. Now this changes the situation completely. And if we add Black Ops into it as well, you can see there's literally just 7 systems that aren't within reach of PAPI. And of those 7 systems, 4 are within 1 jump and the other remaining 3 are within 2 jumps. So it's no time for the Rorqual to be able to take down its core in time before knowing about a fleet being incoming. So this changes the mechanics completely. Now I brushed very quickly on the ADMs. Now the ADMs is the activity defense multiplier. And what this means is this sets the timer for the vulnerability windows for the iHubs. So there's a 2-stage process here. So what's going to be happening is a very long drawn out war of attrition, where I would assume that the mining ships are going to be attacked heavily from all sides. And obviously as PAPI is kind of very wide ranging coalition, probably all of the alliances will be working independently, just working on different pockets, attacking ships constantly. What this will do is it will affect the supply of new materials coming in to Goonswarm. Although on top of that, we have the ore changes as well, which means there's no longer Veldspar in Delph, which means that this could potentially over the long term affect their industry. But as we know from the economic reports over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of stockpiling of minerals by Goonswarm. So how much of an effect this has is not really that clear. But also with the ADMs lowering, it increases the vulnerability windows of the iHubs. And the iHubs are going to be the critical things that are going to be hit, because the iHubs are the things that allow cynojammers and jump bridges to operate. And by removing these, it will remove the ability to protect ships with cynojammers to stop capital ships and fleets from jumping straight into the system, but also really slow down the movement of subcaps around the system without the use of Titan bridges, which is fine for one fleet a day, a couple of fleets a day, but otherwise you start running into jump fatigue issues if there's attacks happening all over the place and you're constantly having to redeploy. So that is where we're at now. So what has happened is that everything before has been focused on one activity, which was the deployment of this Keepstar. Now we're going to be going into war of attrition, trying to undermine morale and solve warfare. And this is going to take a while, and it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. I mean, there is a possibility of going straight for the capital system, but that is unlikely, but I don't know. Just to give you a little bit of background, I am on the PAPI side. I was out of EVE for about 18 months. I've not held a leadership role for well over 2 years. So I'm just a line member, but I take a great interest in what's happening from a strategic level, on the war level footing. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. You can dislike too, that's fine. I know you're online players, you guys like to troll as well, so I'm ready for it, I think. But hopefully you found this useful. If you want me to make more videos, then please mention it in the comments and I will definitely consider it. And yeah, if you've got comments, which I'm sure you have, then let me know. All right, that's it for now. And hopefully I'll see you on my next video or on Twitch on a Wednesday night. And I may go back to streaming on a Saturday night as well. All right, that's it from me. Bye.